So the cloud where back up your photos, run your business, and prompt your AI algorithms, it isn't actually floating up there in the sky.
Right. Yeah, definitely not.
I mean, it is actually made of thousands of tons of concrete, miles of copper wire, and just billions of gallons of water.
Oh, exactly. It's incredibly heavy.
And, well, based on a stack of briefings we are diving into today from the Daily Tech Reader, this is dated Monday, July 13th, 2026, by the way. The digital economy is slamming headfirst into a very messy physical reality. Welcome to the deep dive, everybody. I'm so glad you could join us today.
Yeah, I mean, we have spent years treating code like it somehow, transcends the physical constraints of the planet.
Right, like it's magic.
Exactly, like it's just this invisible magic. But the news coming out today paints a completely different picture. We are seeing this massive collision where the most advanced digital ambitions in human history are suddenly entirely dependent on old-world physical choke points.
Yeah, which is just wild to think about.
It really is. We are talking about secure energy, stable maritime waterways, and local power grids just struggling to keep up.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand this collision, we sort of have to start at one of those ancient physical choke points.
Right.
The briefing highlights a major fracture in the Middle East that is sending these huge shock waves straight into the global energy market.
Yeah, it's a huge development.
Right. Starting Tuesday, the United States is officially restoring restrictions on Iranian maritime traffic.
And that is a really big deal because that interim understanding, the one reached between Washington and Tehran back on May 31st, it has completely unspooled.
Totally fallen apart.
Yeah, completely. I mean, we are just looking at the reported events here, but the briefing states Iran has launched attacks on U.S. facilities in Bahrain and Kuwait following American strikes.
Wow.
And in response to these new maritime restrictions, Iran is fiercely pushing back. They maintain they will resist outside control of the Strait of Hormuz.
And they're proposing some pretty drastic measures, right?
Yeah, they're even floating the idea of charging commercial vessels for what they call protected passage through the strait.
Okay, wait. I want to pause on the Strait of Hormuz for a second. We hear that name constantly in the news, and it's often framed as this apocalyptic bottleneck.
Right, the ultimate checkpoint.
Exactly. But mechanics really matter here. How does a dispute in a 21-mile wide stretch of water actually break the global supply chain?
Well, it really comes down to the cascading logistics of rerouting and insurance.
Insurance, right.
Oh, absolutely. When an area like Hormuz becomes a high-risk zone, maritime insurance premiums for commercial vessels just skyrocket.
Like, how much are we talking?
Sometimes they double or triple literally overnight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And if shipping companies decide the risk or the insurance cost is just too high, they reroute their vessels. But, you can't just take a quick detour on the ocean.
Right, there are no side streets.
Exactly. Rerouting around a major choke point often means adding thousands of nautical miles to the trip.
Which has to take forever.
It adds weeks to a journey. And, crucially, it burns massive amounts of extra marine fuel.
So it's not just a delay in getting goods, like I order something and it takes longer. It's a compounding cost.
Precisely.
The fuel costs way more, the crew obviously needs to be paid for those extra wets, and the shipping containers themselves, they're tied up on the water for an extra 2 weeks.
Right, they aren't emptying out and going back into circulation.
Which creates a container shortage at the original ports.
That is the mechanical cascade right there. And that extra premium, it bleeds into every single product shipped globally. The market sees that physical bottleneck, and it reacts instantly.
It's all connected.
The briefing notes that Brent crude surged over 5% on Monday, and U.S. crude just saw its largest single-day advance since late April.
Wait, before we move on, what exactly is Brent crude versus just, regular oil? And why does this specific metric dictate so much of our economic anxiety?
That's a great question. So Brent crude is essentially the global benchmark for oil prices. It's a specific grade of sweet light crude extracted from the North Sea. And its price is used to benchmark over half of the world's internationally traded crude oil supplies.
So it's the standard.
Right. So when Brent crude spikes 5% in a single day, it means the baseline cost of moving anything anywhere in the world just got more expensive.
Wow.
It acts as this sort of universal tax on the global economy. Before a consumer product ever even reaches your door, its price is already dictated by the fuel required to ship it.
Right.
And the power required to manufacture it, and the aviation fuel for the cargo planes carrying it.
Which makes Tuesday's highly anticipated consumer inflation report a potential absolute nightmare for household budgets.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, the timing couldn't be worse for the average person. It's like a hit straight to the jugular vein of the economy, and everyone's blood pressure is going up.
Yeah, and congressional attention is already turning very sharply toward Federal Reserve policy, right? And the direction of interest rates.
Because they use those rates to fight inflation.
Exactly. The Federal Reserve uses interest rates to cool down the economy. But, and this is the picker, if inflation is being driven by external supply chain shocks and high fuel prices rather than just excessive consumer spending, well, raising interest rates won't magically reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
Right. It doesn't fix the actual problem on the water.
No, it just makes borrowing money for a car or a house more expensive for everyday people, while their energy costs stay painfully high.
And that brings us to the craziest part of this briefing.
Yeah.
When energy costs spike, we usually think about, airlines, trucking companies, factories feeling the pain.
The usual suspects, right?
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting. We call it cloud computing, which sounds so light and invisible. But this deep dive shows the cloud is intensely physical, and this old-world conflict over shipping routes is directly threatening the most futuristic industry on the planet, the technology sector.
It really is. The tech industry is currently undergoing one of the most aggressive physical expansions in the history of human infrastructure.
It's unbelievable.
The scale of the artificial intelligence build-out is, honestly, it's almost difficult to comprehend.
Yeah, let's look at Meta as the prime example here. The briefing details that Meta is expanding a data center development in Louisiana toward 5 gigawatts of capacity.
Yes.
And they are backing this with more than $50 billion in investment.
Yeah.
I mean, $50 billion. And I know a gigawatt is a massive amount of power, but let's put that in perspective for everyone listening. What does 5 gigawatts actually look like in the real world?
Well, okay, 1 gigawatt is roughly enough to power a medium-sized American city.
Wait, a whole city?
Yeah, maybe 300,000 to 750,000 homes, depending on the region.
That is insane.
And Meta is building a single regional facility that will draw 5 times that.
Wow.
You are talking about a data center that requires the equivalent power generation of multiple nuclear reactors.
Wow.
Or, massive, sprawling, utility-scale solar farms just to keep the servers running.
Are tech companies finally being forced to pay their actual physical toll? Because why does artificial intelligence require astronomically more power than the traditional cloud computing we've been doing for the last 15 years?
Right.
I mean, we've had massive data centers for streaming movies, for email, for web hosting. Why is this sudden AI boom so different?
Well, traditional cloud computing is mostly about storage and retrieval.
Okay.
When you open a photo from the cloud, a server simply locates that file and sends it to your phone. It's a very low-intensity action.
It's basically just fetching a book from a library shelf.
Exactly. But artificial intelligence, specifically training and running large language models, is fundamentally different. It is generative.
Right.
When you prompt an AI, thousands of specialized chips have to perform trillions of calculations simultaneously to predict the next word or generate an image entirely from scratch.
Oh, I see. So it's actively thinking and calculating on the fly rather than just fetching a static file.
Yes, and that active calculation requires an enormous amount of electrical current running through those chips.
Which creates heat.
Incredible friction and heat. A standard server rack in a traditional data center might use 5 to 10 kilowatts of power. An AI server rack uses 40, 50, sometimes over 100 kilowatts.
That is a massive jump.
And to keep those chips from literally melting, you can't just use big fans anymore.
Right, a ceiling fan isn't going to cut it.
No, you need advanced liquid cooling systems, massive industrial chillers, and huge pumps circulating water through the facility.
Wow.
So you are paying for the power to run the ships, and then paying an almost equal amount of power just to keep them cool enough to even function.
Which explains the incredible meeting that just happened at the White House. The government actually had to step in.
Yeah, they had no choice.
The briefing says the White House brought utility companies and the absolute giants of tech to the table. I mean, we're talking Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, OpenAI, Oracle, and xAI, all in one room.
What's fascinating here is that governments are realizing that AI computing power isn't just a software product anymore.
Right.
It is a highly demanding, highly vulnerable physical asset, much like a steel mill or an aluminum smelter.
A strategic national asset.
Exactly. And the White House secured a specific pledge from these tech companies. They must fund their own grid upgrades and generation costs.
Okay, so they can't just pass the buck.
Right. The core policy principle they are laying down is that existing, everyday electricity customers should not subsidize new AI data centers.
And that makes perfect sense. I mean, if a tech giant drops a 5-gigawatt facility in your state, they can't just plug into the local grid, stress the infrastructure to the breaking point, and force the utility company to raise everyone's monthly bill to pay for new transmission lines.
Especially because the physical grid is already under immense stress.
Yeah, the weather.
The briefing points out that extreme heat is continuing to place massive pressure on communities across the western and central United States right now.
Yeah, I saw that.
Some desert locations are sitting near or above 110 degrees.
And it's not just afternoon peaks, right? We're seeing high nighttime temperatures extending power demand well past the usual windows. I honestly didn't realize how much the grid relies on the temperature dropping at night just to survive the summer.
It's vital. Power grids are designed around cycles of peak and trough demand.
Okay.
Usually demand spikes in the late afternoon. Everyone gets home, turns on their air conditioning, starts cooking.
The classic rush hour for electricity.
Right. Then, as the sun goes down and temperatures drop, demand plummets. The grid gets a chance to stabilize, and power plants can even cycle down for maintenance. But when it stays 90 degrees at midnight, the air conditioners never turn off.
So the civilian baseline demand stays maxed out around the clock.
Yes. And add to that the fact that AI data centers don't go to sleep.
Oh, right. They're always on.
They run at maximum capacity, 24/7. So you have a maxed out civilian grid, a massive new industrial draw from AI, and physical power lines that actually lose efficiency and sag when they get too hot.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It is. This White House agreement isn't just about fairness to the consumer. It is about grid survival. If tech companies want this power, they have to physically build the new generation capacity themselves.
But the second the White House makes it clear that tech giants have to pay the actual physical toll for their electricity, Wall Street realizes the profit margins on AI are about to shrink.
Oh, big time.
Right. Because Monday delivered a brutal wake-up call to the markets. Tech stocks took a major hit, heavily driven by this exact intersection of geopolitical risk pushing energy prices up and the terrifying reality of AI infrastructure spending.
Investors are finally doing the math on the cooling systems, the copper wire, and the concrete, and they are blinking.
So what does this all mean? Are we officially witnessing the end of the blank check era for AI?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, I think we are.
Because the briefing notes that semiconductors really led the drop. South Korea's market saw a sharp sell-off led by Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix.
Yeah, those numbers were rough.
The SK Hynix numbers are staggering. They recorded their steepest one-day Korean market loss in nearly 2 decades. 2 decades!
Yeah, it's massive.
The briefing says this was heavily driven by profit-taking after a strong NASDAQ debut. But what does profit-taking actually mean for the average investor listening?
Well, profit-taking is essentially what happens when investors see a stock rise significantly and they decide to cash in their chips before the momentum shifts.
Lock in those gains.
Exactly. SK Hynix has been on a massive run because they are a leading producer of high-bandwidth memory, or HBM.
Let's pause again. High bandwidth memory. We hear a lot about NVIDIA chips in the news, but what is HBM and why is it the bottleneck causing all this Wall Street panic?
Think of it like this. If an AI processor like an NVIDIA GPU is a hyper-fast sports car, the memory is the highway it drives on.
Okay, I like that.
Standard computer memory is like a one-lane country road. The sports car can go fast, but it gets stuck in traffic waiting for data to arrive.
Right, can only go as fast as the road allows.
Exactly. High-bandwidth memory physically stacks memory chips on top of each other and connects them directly to the processor. It turns that one-lane road into a 100-lane superhighway.
Wow.
You cannot build a competitive AI system today without massive amounts of HBM. And SK Hynix makes that memory.
Okay, so I'm looking at this historic stock drop, and honestly, it looks like a bubble bursting. Because for the last 2 years, it felt like any company that just whispered artificial intelligence saw their valuation skyrocket.
Yeah, the hype was unreal. But the market is entering a much more mature phase now. Companies were previously rewarded purely for their potential. Now, investors are demanding clear evidence that this massive infrastructure spending can actually produce durable operational and financial returns.
So it's not just about hype anymore.
No, they don't just want raw model capability. They want to see actual revenue.
They want to know how much it actually costs to run these models, how reliably they operate, and whether corporate buyers are actually willing to pay enough for AI subscriptions to cover the billions spent on, like, Louisiana data centers.
Precisely. The technology sector is suddenly accountable to the exact same economic gravity as every other heavy industry.
The free ride is over.
It is accountable to price, execution, and cash flow. The long-term demand for high-bandwidth memory and computing is absolutely there, but the era of unlimited, unquestioned spending is over.
Right.
Corporate buyers are emphasizing reliability, integration, and measurable productivity now.
And this massive convergence of physical constraints and digital ambition, it isn't just hitting Wall Street and global shipping lanes. It is filtering down into our careers, our health, and our daily lives.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, looking at the job market section of the briefing, the strongest theme emerging is convergence.
Absolutely. The boundaries between industries are just collapsing.
Yeah.
You cannot be an effective cloud architect today without understanding the energy sector.
Because they're so intertwined.
Right. Utility careers, data center management, and cloud engineering are completely overlapping. The people building our digital future have to intimately understand physical infrastructure.
It's fascinating because, the dominant narrative has always been that AI is just going to wipe out whole occupations. The classic, robots are coming for your job fear.
Yeah, we've all heard that.
But the data here shows AI is primarily changing individual tasks rather than eliminating entire roles. The briefing highlights AI-assisted coding moving heavily into ordinary development workflows.
Yeah, the technology is acting as a highly capable assistant. It's a co-pilot that can draft boilerplate code or spot syntax errors, but it cannot understand the nuance of a company's specific business logic.
Right. It doesn't know the why behind the code.
Exactly. Human verification remains absolutely essential. The developer is shifting from someone who types out every single line of code to someone who architectures the system, directs the AI, and meticulously verifies the output for security and quality.
It's a shift from being a manual labor to being a manager of an automated tool.
Yep.
Human judgment is the premium skill. And speaking of human needs, the physical realities we face in our daily lives are in such stark contrast to these high-tech debates. I mean, we just talked about extreme heat breaking the power grid, but the briefing lists it as the top domestic public health threat right now.
It is. The human body has hard physical limits. The guidance in the briefing emphasizes checking on isolated neighbors, maintaining hydration, and recognizing heat illness early.
Because it sneaks up on you.
It really does. And we talked about how the power grid needs the temperature to drop at night to stabilize, right?
Yeah.
Well, the human body requires the exact same thing. High nighttime temperatures are particularly dangerous because they limit physical recovery.
Oh, that makes sense.
If the ambient temperature doesn't drop, your cardiovascular system has to work overtime all night just to keep your core temperature down.
You wake up exhausted because your body basically ran a marathon while you were sleeping.
Exactly. It's especially dangerous for older adults, children, and outdoor workers.
It's such a sobering reality check. I mean, we are building machines that can process trillions of parameters, meaning the billions of artificial neural connections that allow an AI to generate text or code. Yet our organic bodies are incredibly fragile.
We are tethered to our biology.
Yeah.
There's no escaping it.
Yeah.
And the things that capture our collective imagination are still deeply rooted in that physical, biological experience.
Oh, for sure.
Just look at what is taking center stage in the culture section of today's briefing.
The World Cup semifinals, I was just reading this, it is such a brilliant juxtaposition. Right in the middle of debating 5-gigawatt data centers and Middle Eastern oil transit, the world is gathering physically in stadiums to watch a legacy sport.
Amazing.
France meets Spain on Tuesday afternoon in Arlington, Texas.
And then Argentina meets England on Wednesday in Atlanta.
Right.
And Argentina is chasing history there, trying to secure the first consecutive World Cup championships since Brazil achieved it back in 1958 and 1962.
Think about the irony of that. We have access to infinite digital entertainment, algorithmically generated content, customized to our exact preferences. But billions of people are choosing to tune in to watch human beings push their physical limits on a grass pitch in Texas and Georgia.
Because human struggle and human triumph cannot be artificially generated.
No, they can't.
The briefing points out that while AI tools are assisting with tasks across every industry translation, editing, design, media production, human judgment, and storytelling, still determine what deserves lasting attention. We intrinsically value the physical stakes.
In a world flooded with synthetic content, authenticity becomes the most valuable commodity.
Without a doubt. The most irreplaceable workers in this new era will be the ones who understand this exact intersection.
The bridge builders.
Yeah, they won't just be the best software engineers. They will be the people who understand how advanced technology, physical infrastructure, business operations, and human empathy all converge.
Looking back at the journey we've taken in this deep dive, the interconnectedness of all these systems is just staggering.
It really is a web.
I mean, we started with military tensions in the Strait of Hormuz threatening to spike the price of Brent crude. That expensive energy ripples through the global supply chain, exacerbating inflation, right at the exact same time the tech industry tries to build out these huge 5-gigawatt data centers.
And then those data centers hit a power grid that is already strained by extreme heat waves,
Right.
which forces the White House to mandate that tech giants pay for their own electricity infrastructure, which then triggers a massive reality check on Wall Street.
Causing a historic sell-off in semiconductor stocks like SK Hynix, as investors realize the physical cost of the AI revolution is absolutely monumental.
All while we try to stay hydrated, check on our neighbors, and gather in physical stadiums to watch the World Cup.
It is a massive amount of information to process, but this is exactly why doing a deep dive gives you an edge. Understanding the future requires looking past the software updates. It requires understanding how that technology collides with the heavy, messy physical world.
And this raises an important question to consider as you go about your week.
Okay, let's hear it.
We have spent the last decade assuming the future belongs entirely to the smartest digital algorithms. We've treated code as the ultimate currency. But looking at today's landscape, is it possible that the true winners of the AI revolution won't be the people who write the best software?
Wait, really? Who then?
Could the ultimate power actually belong to whoever controls the oldest physical resources on Earth, the stable shipping lanes, the copper wire, and the raw electricity?
Wow. That is a fascinating thought to leave on. If the cloud is actually made of concrete, then the people who own the concrete are the ones really running the show. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. Keep looking past the invisible technology in your life and keep exploring the physical foundations of our digital world. Until next time.